You ready? You're listening to the Real Pineapple Podcast Network. Good evening, ladies, gentlemen, days, and gays. This is the Real Pineapple. This is your humble host, Hunter, here. Hope you're having a great night, day, weekend, whenever you're checking this out. I am really excited to have today writer, director, for this new film, To Kill a Wolf, which by the time you hear this, that review will be live. Kelsey Taylor. Kelsey, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for making the time. I really appreciate it. So before we get into the movie, I did want to bring up one thing because I was just a big fan of it when it came out. You directed this short film called Alien Specimen. I haven't seen Romulus yet. I am a little behind. I'm a little behind on my new releases right now, but I rewatched it a couple times. And I remember watching it initially. Talk to me about how that project got to you and like how you kind of went about making that. Because um, and I can talk shit. I don't care. I think Alien Covenant is goddamn terrible, and I felt more in that 10 minutes watching your film than I felt in Covenant. So yeah, talk to me about how that got to you.
Well, that means a lot. Thank you. Um, and yeah, that was such a cool opportunity. I have Adam here who was our DP and producer on Alien Specimens as well. Like we
Oh,
are
right
partners.
on. Hi.
But that project came to us. There's a platform called Tongle, and you basically can pitch on projects there. And they had posted this project for Alien Specimen, and it was in conjunction with 20th Century Fox, which is no longer.
Yeah.
We pitched on the project, and we are one of five that were selected, and they were greenlit to then go make these short films. So I don't know if you've seen all the other films, but there are five of them floating
Yeah, I
around.
have seen the other ones. Yeah.
Okay, figured. But it was a really, really cool project. I will say, when we pitched on it, we were like, you're going to help us out with this, right? You know, greenhouse and space. And then it turned out, no, like you're kind of on your own. So it was like a very down and dirty process for us to get the thing made. And I'm
Yeah.
really glad it turned out the way that it did, and especially glad that it has resonated with fans, because that is the scariest thing about tackling IP is, are we going to piss a
Yeah.
bunch of people off? Like, is everyone going to hate us? And so far, like no hate mail. That's
That's
good.
good. That's good.
And it does make me want to tackle more IP. Like I really enjoy that and trying to figure out like what is it that people love about a film, and how do we make them care? Because like you said, I think some of the later Alien films, you don't care as much about the character. And that first one, like you're rooting for Ripley.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's what we wanted, was to have a character that people are rooting for. And I think we have two. We've got a dog and we've got a
I-
girl.
Is there a dream IP that you would want to tackle?
I mean, there's a lot. It's funny because everything gets remade now. So I'm like, I'll get the Harry Potter
Give me
remake.
three. Give me three.
I would love the Harry Potter remakes. I would love to do
Okay.
Artemis Fowl. I don't think they got that one.
Ooh,
It's
okay.
my favorites. I love that they just redid the Golden Compass because the movie didn't do it for me. And
Fair.
the new series is like, all right, all right. Um, what else? Can't touch Lord of the Rings. Uh,
I mean, Amazon's trying, so I mean, you could.
they
Yeah,
shouldn't. They
yeah.
shouldn't have done it.
I
Walk away from that one, you guys. Um, I don't know. I love books. I love the Bartimaeus trilogy. Like I have a lot of like teen fantasy books. A lot of
okay.
Merlin stuff. The Lost Years of Merlin. That's a great series.
Well, I feel
Um,
like we were in a age where we're getting so much of that YA
yeah.
like adjacent type stuff, and I think to varying, degrees of success. I feel like there's still like very much a market for that, but I'm of the opinion of the IP train that I just don't know how much people care when they actually take on the IP. That's one of my biggest like axes to grind in general. So,
Yeah. Well, I'm
but
like, how do you feel about Dune? I'm curious. How, does that?
okay, so so I was never a big Dune fan growing up. I watched the first one and I just was like, man, I want to love. I get why people love this. I personally don't. But then I saw Dune Part 2 and I
Yeah.
love that fucking movie so like I was like, "Oh my God, this rules." And so now I'm actually hyped for Dune Messiah, but yeah, I grew like and I watched the original Dune, and it just didn't click.
Oh, yeah.
Now it's vibing for me though. So
Yeah. But I think that's a great film that they've built this world that is really tactile and real filling. And for me, a lot of the YA stuff was just it's too cheeseball. Like it doesn't take itself seriously enough. And it really limits the audience of people who are willing to watch it.
yeah, I agree. So speaking of world building, let's talk about To Kill a Wolf because
Yeah.
um, okay. I'm always fascinated by when female directors take on like really dark subject matter, especially when term comes to terms like assault. Um, Without giving too much away, there were multiple points in the back third of this movie where I was just like yelling because I was very frustrated by certain characters and how vile they were. In terms of directing this, was there ever a point where you were like, someone else needs to direct this? Because I'm always fascinated by doing the writing and the directing because
Yeah.
that's two jobs that you can potentially, screw up. And by the way, you didn't. You did great. But what was that process like as far as like when you were writing it? Did you go like, oh yeah, I need to direct this, or was that something that you kind of decided early on, or
Yeah, I think for me, I'm not one of those directors who wants to write. I'm not like I have to write and direct it. Writing has really been out of necessity because no one has handed me a script and been like, go. So this one was definitely born out of that. But I think there's a lot of truth from, my own life, from other people's lives that have gone into this. And in that sense, I felt like, yeah, I know exactly how this needs to be done because I could see how this is done in the incorrect way. And that scares me.
yeah.
I cringe when I see portrayals on TV where you're like, oh, clearly no one has any sense of what this actually looks like in the real world. You've just done something very icky. And I hope nobody feels that way if they watch the film, if they have experienced anything similar, because we did our very, very, very best to make sure that everything feels very true to life. And it was hard. It was hard watching a lot of those scenes unfold. Hard on the actors because not to give anything away, but some of our villains are very, very sweet people in real life, and it's just hard to do that over and over and over and make someone feel very, very uncomfortable. Um,
So being the writer, being the director, where is that balance between allowing your players, as it were, to go ahead and kind of give them room to breathe as far as like maybe ad libbing a little bit versus being confident enough in your script and knowing like this is kind of the direction I want you to go. Like where is
yeah.
that give and pull as far as like certain scenes?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the scene. I'm definitely someone who's very open to, like, look, this is the intention of the scene, and as long as this is communicated, I'm not glued to the lines. But
Okay.
then there are certain lines that are like, no, there's a reason that this is here, and it needs to be this. But I would hope, and I hope that I have been able to talk with the actors and give them those reasons of why that needs to be so, to the extent that they can make it their own, because they're the ones ultimately telling the story. So I never want to have them try to deliver something that does not ring true for them because I think it won't ring true for other people. So I think there
Okay.
has to be flexibility, but I would hope that I can justify why I wrote things because there's a reason I put it on the page. There's a lot of thought that goes into every single line and the way it unfolds, but that doesn't mean it's the end all be all because it doesn't matter until you get to shooting. Like it's going to keep changing and evolving until it's in the editing room.
So yeah, so like as far as the shooting itself, one of the things I really loved is how lush and like bright everything looked with this very like dark background, like as far as like what's actually happening. Like I love the contrast of that. Um what was there any scene because there's a couple scenes shot at night that I was like, oh, logistically, I feel like this would just be a pain in the ass to have to go ahead and do. What was the hardest scene to shoot, like as far as you can get into without spoiling anything?
Oh, I mean,
No, what is yours?
I know. I was gonna let you talk about this one cinematographer.
You can talk about it.
Yeah, no spoilers, but the ones with our creatures was very difficult to shoot because it's all with flashlights. And the tricky thing about flashlights is that the actors are operating them. So they are now essentially lighting the scene and also acting. So you're telling someone, hey, can you point the light this way, but look this way? Okay, no, like tilt that down a tiny bit more. Like, it just becomes really, really finicky and it's hard it's just really hard on the actors and also hard on our DP. It was like, no, you put the light in the wrong place. Performance was great, but we couldn't see anything. So that was just logistically very, very difficult. Would love some more money to have bigger lights to do a scene like that.
So yeah, what was the shooting schedule like? Like, how long did you have to go ahead and get this knocked out?
Yeah, so we had 25 days, which is
Damn.
luxurious. Like
Wow.
Adam and I have done films together that were 7 days. So the priority for us was that we had very, very little money. We had very like a small crew, it was about
Yeah.
9 of us, but we wanted time. So we were like, we're going to scale down. We'll keep it tight, but we just need the time in order to do this properly if we don't have the numbers.
Yeah.
So I'm so thankful that we did because there's lots of location moves. There are some sequences at dusk that we would shoot over the course of several days just because you only get an hour each day. So we're lucky that we had the time, but it came with a lot of sacrifices.
I talked to Madison Brown last week.
Oh, cool,
Um,
cool.
yeah, she had nothing but heaping
Crikey.
praise. Yeah, she had nothing but praise about you and as far as your
Oh,
directorial style. She said you were great to work with. Um, Talk to me as far as like about casting the getting the roles cast because one thing that I'm always fascinated by is like, okay, if you go with A, you might have your A option, but maybe you have to go with your B option or C option, or if you cast this role wrong, potentially it can, the whole film suffers because of it. I think
yeah.
you nailed, um, I think you nailed everyone as far as like what the roles need to be because I thought Madison did a great job. I thought Ivan did a great job. Yeah, talk to me about that process as far as like going through the tapes and all that. Was there
Yeah.
ever any hesitation on who would get what role or anything or?
So it's kind of funny. I think this is partly the nature of indie films. Like, we don't have a casting director. We didn't go out and do like a casting call and get people to come in. We met Ivan, Adam and I on a film we did called High Heat, which might be entertaining to check out if you have, time.
Okay.
Um, but
Very different. Yeah.
very different. It's a comedy. And we thought
Action
that
comedy.
Ivan was hilarious, which is not, the kind of trait you would be looking for in the hunter we'd originally imagined. But in meeting him, we're like, he just makes really unexpected, interesting choices. He's just a good actor. And we were like, well, could he be our hunter? And we did a full rewrite of the script after meeting Ivan, and we added a little
Wow.
bit more humor into the character and just reimagine the character. And I think it was born out of Ivan asking me, "What if the hunter smoked weed?" And I was like, "I think so." And then I thought about it. I was like, I mean, but what if he did? Like, it's kind of really interesting. It's a different character. But then we ran with that, and it really opened it up and led to the script that we have today. So thank goodness that we met Ivan. But I think we got our hearts set on Ivan and just figured out how to make the script make sense with the character we are seeing. And then Caitlin Doubleday, who plays our aunt, is also in that movie High Heat, and you'll see
Okay.
her like completely different role. She's also hysterical,
Yeah.
but she's just a good actress. And it was amazing to see the choices that she would make on that set. Her instincts are so, so, so good. And she's had like a long career. And so we were very nervous to ask her, but we said, you know what? Screw it. Like, let's ask. What's the worst that happens? She says no. And thank goodness she said yes. So we got really lucky on the casting front. Really lucky.
As far as casting Danny, because talking to Madison was really interesting, talking about how she comes from like, like Dynasty, which is more of a, very soap opera-ish
Yeah.
type beat. But some of the stuff that Danny goes through, again, no spoilers, is so heavy. And I
Yeah.
was kind of asking her about the whiplash of that, and she was even saying that she kind of wanted to get more into those, like she loves getting into those meteor, like more dramatic type beats. Were there any conversations as far as her origin? Again, no spoilers. Like what were those conversations like as far as getting the best out of Madison out of those scenes?
We didn't have a ton of conversations. And I don't want to say that is like shirking the homework. I think I trusted her to do her homework and me to do my homework. And I knew that how serious she was about doing this properly. And we had a few conversations just about the material resonating and making sense. And I think in talking with her, I could just tell you understand what this is. Whether you've experienced or someone you know has experienced it, like we're on the same page. And there was a number of moments on set, like before a scene or in the middle of a scene, where we would just have a moment together. Um, and you could just feel that the other person was feeling the same thing. And that was really, really special. But we didn't do a whole lot of like talking about things.
Okay.
I think it was just about being there and supporting the other person through something that we were both experiencing. Because it's hard to do those scenes over and over and over again.
Yeah. There's a scene in particular, I was really happy that like it is the film is so it's so fairy tale-ish as far as like finding her and everything, kind of going like, why is she here? And then when you find out why, it's one of those like, oh, that's unpleasant, and and just being really heartbroken, honestly. But I think you nailed those scenes as the scene as the film goes on. A couple more questions for you. I love the score in this movie. I thought it was like haunting. Haunting is the word I would use for it. There's a song that's used at the beginning of the film, and then the way that that ties in at the end, I was like, oh, like that. I was like, oh, like brava on that. I was very impressed with that.
Oh, good.
Was that something that was like very early on in your writing process? You're like, this needs to be included in here. Was that something that was included later? Because
Well, I'm curious. Now I want to sing all the songs and make sure we're talking about the same one. But I think for the sake of what we're talking about, themes are really, really important to me when it comes to music. And I'm originally, I grew up playing piano. I'm a music minor from college. So the music to me is super important. And when I think about my favorite films, like the soundtracks are so iconic. And a
yeah,
lot of the times it's very repetitious, but that's because when you hear a theme, it means something as it evolves over the course of the movie. So we went into this speaking with our composers who are amazing, Sarah Barone and Forrest Christensen. They're a team of composers. But we talked a lot about, okay, what are the themes that we have, and where can those recur so that it does mean something when you hear it at the beginning and then you hear it again later. And like the soundtrack that he's listening to at the very beginning, My Place in the Sun, having that recur at the end as well. Like that may not be something that everyone gets, but it's there. It's there for people who are musically very acute. And listening for those things.
was there a reason why it's a vinyl player? I just curious on that.
You know, I think for me, I want everything to be a period piece. And I thinking about this cabin. Like this cabin is it's old. It's old. This guy is really into music, but like nothing's been updated. He doesn't have a disposable income. So as much as he might like this grand speaker system and this up to date, his AirPods, like no, nothing's been upgraded. And he's just using the same shit that's been there since the 80s. So that's
Okay.
why the cassette, that's why the vinyl, like that's just what's been there. And I think that speaks to that character too. He's just stuck in the past.
Yeah, aesthetically, I just like as someone who's become a vinyl, like it's such an expensive hobby, but as someone who's like as someone who's been getting into vinyl, like I just appreciate that. I was like, okay, I like this. Um, couple more questions for you. At the end of the day, I always like love to ask directors this, especially if they write the film. Is there a certain theme? Is there a certain message that you want audiences to take away from this film when the credits roll?
Yeah, and I think a lot of the times for me as a filmmaker, it's not even giving people an answer, it's getting people to ask questions.
Okay.
Like, is that right? Like, I think for this one though, redemption is a big theme for sure. Like, what happens when we stray from the path? How do we get back on? Can we? And I think the answer this loosely gives is it's with other people. It's through other people that we can help get through the tough times. And I think thematically, shame is another very, very universal
Mm,
theme in this. Like how do you deal with that? How can you bear that burden and how can you alleviate it for other people?
love that. And then I will ask too, what is the biggest change script wise from the conception of what you wanted this to be to what we ended up getting?
Like, did someone tell you to ask this? Because
No, so I'll be honest with you, and I'll give a little peek behind the curtain. I
yeah.
actually don't write questions like I
Oh,
do a
what?
little bit of research, like, well, because I'm a big Craig Ferguson fan, and so like he would always just kind of treat his interviews like conversations. So yeah,
Okay.
I might write one, two questions down tops, but yeah, this is just us. So no
There's
one
plenty
told
to
me.
talk about. Okay, what's funny is the first draft of this script, Danny killed the woodsman.
Oh shit. Okay. That's
So
a
it's funny that you asked that. It was very much like a female power because our original concept was like, what if the woodsman was a bad guy? Red Riding Hood escapes from the wolf, but
yeah.
now she's by the woodsman, who's even worse. And so we had her,
Interesting.
on this journey
Huh.
of getting her own freedom. Like she has to set herself free. And then over the
Yeah.
years, like it's evolved into, we need other people. It's not just about
Interesting.
blasting our way through our obstacles. So maybe that said something about me as well.
Okay, so let's follow that real quick. Was it more like horror in that way? Because there are some moments in here that I think are very like that brought me back to Specimen, where like there are these
Yeah.
horror elements where I'm like, oh, okay. Was that were you going more that like almost like that I spit on your grave kind of like more that vibe, or was it
Yeah, it was more of a genre piece. And that was
okay?
the original goal of this was everyone was like, what make a horror movie, make a horror movie. So we were making this like genre fantastical horror movie. There were guns. And then we even made a teaser for that version. And it's funny, like it definitely reads like a werewolf
Hmm.
horror movie. And that has just shed over the years, and here we are.
So, I mean, so why make that change? Like, because I feel like this is more in the realm of something like, almost like The Gray,
Mm.
where it is more psychological. Where when I got to the end of it, I really did feel, and I mean this is a compliment, like heavy, and I actually was like, I need to go for a walk and kind of just
Oh,
digest this. What was so? Yeah, what caused that change from the horror to more of that piece?
I mean, I think I don't want to just say logistical. We had a hard time building that world and pulling off what we wanted to do on with what we had. But
Okay.
also, I think just as I've changed as a person over the years, I wanted things to be more gray. That there aren't any good guys or bad guys. Um, and yeah, I think also meeting Ivan catalyzed a lot of the big script changes.
Okay.
He just became much more sympathetic, and we're like, okay, this is more a story about two people finding their own redemption than it is about female empowerment and kicking butt. But I'd love to do another fantasy horror movie at some
It,
point. Like it's still
okay,
on the list.
okay, because I was gonna ask, like, because I was like that sounds interesting to me. I'd like to explore that world. So
We had a great idea that was like, she's a werewolf. Actually, I think your mom had this idea. She's a werewolf. She doesn't know it. And the woodsman's keeping her prisoner in there because she's been bitten by the wolf. And he's going to teach her how to live. But
really,
yeah,
okay.
there's a lot of ways we could make the same, iteration of this movie 10 times over.
So okay, now all right, now oh God, okay, now my brain. Okay, so, so let me throw out this one more question for you. Podcasting is a huge as I said podcasting is a huge thing, but like with like audio dramas and stuff like that, given your experience with shorts, because I actually saw the film that you did for Southwest, which I was actually like really impressed by as well. um as an artist, obviously you can write, obviously you can direct. What do you want, like what do you want to do like moving forward? Like, do you want to do horror? Do you want to get more into like sci-fi? Like do you have like a bucket list of things artistically that you want to tackle?
Yes, I mean Robert Zemeckis to me is a hero because he has an incredible movie in every genre.
Yeah.
And what I would love is a career where I can make an awesome musical, I can make an awesome horror movie, an awesome thriller, a great American epic. Like I don't want my taste to be limited. And I think unfortunately a lot of directors these days, especially when you're trying to get your foot in the door, you get pigeonholed into like, oh, you're the horror filmmaker. That's what you do. You're the comedy
Hmm.
person. Um, and that's a fear, but a bigger fear is not making anything at all. And
Fair.
I definitely want to keep making things. And Adam and I both tend to gravitate towards world building. Like we love creating worlds. So I think sci-fi, horror, fantasy, you'll definitely see us in those spaces if we have our way.
Okay. Um, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you this. Like, as a person of color, I definitely feel like things are getting better artistically. We are seeing more diversity as far as people behind the camera and front of the camera writing things.
Yeah.
But I myself have been pretty vocal about the fact that I think like in the review space that there is a lot of room for improvement as far as diversity. Being a
Mm.
female director, what sort of headway, what sort of lanes have you been trying, like what sort of lanes are you trying to kind of push forward for as far as your career?
Yeah, so it's interesting you say like representation is getting better. Like from when
Yeah.
I started, I see more females on set, not in a lot of the roles that have traditionally been male roles. That's interesting to hear review space. I didn't really think about that. But I have noticed like not many interviews have been with females either. So I can see like just minorities tend to not be there, it sounds like. And financing, I think, is a huge, 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 huge problem. I don't think there's enough diversity in the kinds of people who are financing films. And I
Um,
think ultimately those are the people saying yes to projects, which is very scary when we can have, these push for representation. But I think if it's still at the top, nothing has changed. I think it will be a slow, slow ripple of effects at the bottom. And I think it's a very risk adverse industry. So it's hard to get people to take chances on something that they don't,
yeah.
that's not a known entity. And I find that very, very frustrating. I know for me, like making the feature was the first step towards making another feature.
Yeah.
And I think it's very scary. I don't know if you watch the doc, This Changes Everything.
No, I haven't seen that. I'll add that to the list with high heat.
Yeah. Sorry, I just gave you two movies to watch
No,
now.
no, no, no. I've got the time right now, so
Oh, good, good, good. Because that one's, it's just, it's frustrating to hear the incredible filmmakers who make one film and it does well and they don't get to make another one, or it's 10 years in making their next film. And just knowing how long it took to make this one, I really hope it's not another 7 years before I make a film, but I think that might be a reality.
well, I was talking to Nicole Regal, who did this film with Kiki Lane Dandelion, and she had done this film Holler. That's incredible. There's your homework. And she
Color.
talked, yeah, she talked about the fact that it was so hard to get, funding, kind of get in that space, but how
Yeah.
rewarding it's been. I'm being told last question, so my last question for you is going to be this. At the end of the day, after making this film, what's the biggest lesson that you took away from this? And is there something on the cutting room floor that you wish, like, ah, damn, I wish we could have found a space for this?
there's there are very few scenes that were cut from this movie, just because we didn't shoot that much, and I don't regret any of them being on the cutting room floor. There's Adam and I went back and watched one night. We're like, let's go see. Maybe we should have kept those in. And no, I'm glad we didn't. Ultimately, like, it was better for the overall movie, even if I love those pieces individually. Um, what was the other part of this question? I'm sorry.
Oh, the other part. Oh my gosh. I lost it.
But I like it. It's a good ending.
Damn it. Actually
Oh,
cannot
the
remember.
lesson learned.
Yes, there we go.
Lesson
Ha,
learned.
yes, that one. Thank you.
Um, okay, so twofold. One, making movies is really hard. Duh. But two, on a more serious note, I learned so much about the writing process. I did not think, like, so much of the writing process is communicating your vision through words. And a movie is totally visual. And so when you're having a script that you're handing to people and they're just reading it, it's not the same as watching it, which seems obvious. But in making the film, I just realized how much repetition there was in our script. Like we didn't need to say things three times. We didn't need to show something three times to understand this guy's alone in the woods. We get it.
Mm.
So I think just trusting the audience more to pick up on things. That is a catch 22 though, because when people are reading their script or reading your script, they're reading like five scripts at a time and they're skimming through as quickly as they can. So they may not pick up on those nuances. So I think it's writing a good script that can get made is different than having a good script for shooting. And I'm still
Hmm.
trying to figure out how to deal with that as a director moving forward when I read scripts and make sure I catch the nuance, and how to translate that to screen. Because as a director, that's your job, is translating script to screen.
Well, I think you did a great job with it here. Kelsey, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me. This was really enjoyable. So thank you for
Yeah,
this.
conversation under things.
Yeah, no problem. Can you please tell people will there be where they'll be able to see the film and where they can find you on socials before I let you go?
Yes, we'll be having our US premiere coming soon. I can't say where, unfortunately, but we'll also be touring up and down the West Coast. So keep eyes peeled there in some Oregon cities, California, hopefully Washington. But social wise, you can find my websites, www.kelseytaylor.me, or To Kill a Wolf Film for Instagram, To Kill a Wolf Movie on Instagram, or I'm Kelsey Taylor, has no Insta on Instagram. And tokillawolf.com.
Yeah.
Wow, not good at that part. Sorry, Hunter.
No, you're all good. That's why we saved that for last. Seriously, thank you so much again for taking the time, guys. I hope you have a great rest of the day. Hope the film does well. I will definitely tag you when everything is
Awesome.
uploaded. But have a great rest of your week, and thanks again for making the time.
Thank you, Hunter. So nice to meet you.
Likewise, you take care.
All right, you too.
Bye bye.